I'm making this like a relief plaque. I'm actually going to use it as a name plaque. So the difficulties with making something flat are the tendency for the clay to warp and shrink. Clay has a memory, and it remembers what shape it was originally. And if you stretch the top surface of the clay but don't stretch the bottom when you're rolling it out, it can cause warping. One of the other ways we try to avoid that is using a grogged stoneware clay, or in this case I'm going to use crank. Although I've told you to have a roller and some guides and cloths, we're going to try and avoid rolling the clay any more than we have to, because we don't want trying to do everything we can to stop the clay warping as it dries. So I'll just get this wee bag opened. So what I've done with this bag of clay is I literally just dropped it flat on the floor one way, turned it over, dropped it flat on the other, to kind of spread it and flatten the surface. Again, just to kind of give me less handling of the clay once I actually start. So if you have a proper harp for cutting the clay, this will make things easier. But what I'm going to do with cutting wire is I'm going to use my fingers as a guide to cut about the depth of my forefinger thick, roughly. So you can use this technique for any subject. You know, just draw out, make your own templates, draw it out, and then you can use the technique. So I want to get it print here onto a board, so I'm going to lift it over the board. So just bear with me a minute and lift the other bag right down, this out of the way. Right, so this is the slice of clay I've cut. So I've put it on a board, and it's going to live on this board until it goes into the kiln. Now obviously if you're using air dried clay, you don't need to worry about firing it, but it's just to let you know, I kind of let it just stay on this board. So I'll put a wee cloth over the top. The cloth over the top and the cloth over the bottom are just to let the clay glide as I roll it, so they don't end up sticking to your rolling pin. So you use your guides. I'm using guides a bit larger, but I find A4 size is quite a good size to manage. So I don't want to roll that too much, so that's going to do that. And then start with the outline. So the first piece of clay, I'm nearly going to divide this in two, and the first piece is really just what is going to be the backing for the plaque. So all I need to know is that the horse template, the outline template, fits on with a gap at both sides, and it's entirely up to you. I don't want it to have a very deep surround. I want it to be just a small border around it. So once you've done that, you can get just use those guides. Just another wee tip, if you're using your guide or whatever ruler, you probably know this already. So say I want to cut along this edge, never put your ruler here and try to cut a straight line, because if you go off the straight line, you'll go in towards the piece that you want to be good. So I know on the inside. Okay, and then I'll just take the excess away. Stick. And then I just want to square that off. Now, you could be very precise about this and get a page or get something that is square in the corners so that you can use it as a template to make sure it's nice and square. Or alternatively, you could have it an oval or a circle, just depending on your subject matter. I might round this to an oval, but not a real oval. But what I'd probably do is round these edges whenever it's dried a wee bit more, just to soften it rather than having square edges. So this is going to be your backing plate, if you like. So you just put it aside. Oh, sorry, open that open. And then you get taking the off cut here. So I'm going to roll this bit thinner. This is going to be for the body of the horse. And I'm going to build up layers. From your template you have the outline, which is this one, but you also have all the different planes, which is this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to build it up into thinnish layers. So you're going to cut your outline first, and then you're going to add on the bulk. This will be a good exercise for you too prior to making a horse, because it lets you think about the muscle grips and the different planes. So again, with my two guys, just roll this a bit thinner. And because I've already rolled it underneath the cloth, a little of the dampness of the clay has been absorbed. If whenever you're cutting your template out, say for instance, I know I'm probably not going to have enough height, you can join it together, but I know it's a wee bit thick in the centre, so I'll get that in. Again, I'm just putting fairly small amount of pressure on. I'm not leaning. I'm making a small difference each time I roll. I'm not looking to lean heavy once and get it all the thinness I require in the first roll. I want to build it up slowly, and remember to kind of work from the centre out. So when you're doing this at home, you'll do it nice and carefully. I'm just going to do it a wee bit rough and ready. So move that, just checking what it'll say. Go with this thinner. So because I've rolled it quite a bit on that surface, I want to turn it and roll it on the other surface. And this is all just to prevent it warping. So I probably should measure how thick that is. So the base was thicker. I would say it's about 4mm thick, and the base is closer to 1 centimetre. Okay, so then we get our outline, and you can decide to make it one way or the other. I want to make it the horse jumping this way, because I'm going to put the horse's name underneath. When I'm finished, I'm going to use it for the stable door, making this one for myself. So just put your template down, and you can use a blunt tool, the end of a paintbrush or a pencil, and just draw around. A blunt, it has to be blunt. If it's a sharp edge, you'll find your pencil or your pen's going to keep going through the paper And don't worry about the mane at this stage. And you can decide to make it with or without a rider. I'm going to do mine without a rider, but by the time the rider and the tack go on last, by the time we get to that stage, it'll be obvious what you do. You just add another layer for the rider. So again, because I'm doing this online for you to see today, I'm doing it in one session. Ideally at home, you would do this over at least maybe 3 sessions. So the first thing you would do is roll the slab for the base and the thinner slab for this first outline. Then I would leave it overnight covered, loosely covered with a bit of plastic so that it stiffens up. I was going to say loosely covered, I just mean like a sheet of plastic over the top with no clay sticking out at the edges. Just to let it firm up, because it's just easier to work with if the clay is a wee bit firmer. The other thing you can do is on your template you can do like quarter marks, so a mark that goes through your template, so it marks your template and the clay underneath. And what that means is, if you're not sure if you've traced everything and you want to lift your paper check, if you have those quarter marks, you can line your template up quite easily. There we go. And just take your template off. And then the ideal tool to cut this out with is like a needle tool. I'm going to get one. So a tool like this, and you hold it vertical. Don't be careful that you don't angle it. You want it going straight down into the clay, and then just cut that out. Again, ignore the mane and the loose bits of the tail. Every so often, you see, when you can see as I'm doing that, a wee bit of clay is gathering up. Every now and again, lift your tool out and clean any excess off. So I'm just doing to really the dock of the tail there. I'm just doing a wee bit of the tail. And I'm just doing the outline. I'm not cutting this off separately because I'm going to build this leg up and leave that. So I'm not cutting 2 separate legs. I'm just cutting round the outline of the hind legs. When you're doing this, the other thing to watch for is that you're not leaning on the clay when you're doing it, because then you can join the clay up again. So with these legs, I don't know if you notice what I'm doing is trying to do a lot of straight lines. rather than too many bendy lines that will be weak. Okay, so that's the basics. What you do is just peel off the excess. So I cut the bulk of it away and then just take this away in smaller wee sections. Okay. So what I would do at this stage, if you're making this yourself, at this stage you would your clay will be drier than this because you'll have let it dry overnight. Just clean this detail. So what you would do at this stage is cross hatch and slip it onto your base. But I'm not going to do that just at this stage. I think I will hope it will be easier for you to see against the brown board. So this is stuck side, so I'm using one of these wee spatula tools. Now when you're doing this, just be very careful that you don't stretch it out of shape. So what I am going to do now is I'm going to put it on a cloth. Again, so when I'm finished for the dye, I can move it and let it dry overnight. You're going to, you know, if you've let your clay dry overnight, then I need to do this a wee bit. So this is your basic horse shape. When you have it onto your base, we're just going to say that this cloth is my base. What I would do is just lay the template over the top and just correct the shape. I've actually done the template on tracing paper so that I can see through a wee bit. So you can print your template onto tracing paper and that'll just help you. So you can arrange the legs so you've got the right position. So I'm just using the template as a guide. So the next thing I would do is just soften all those edges. Smooth them down a bit. So it's just useful to have a wee brush. So just a wee damp brush and just soften those lines. You want them soft, but you still want a nice clean line, that lovely sweep of the body up to the haunches and then down to the tail. Okay, we're just gonna so it's a damp brush, just taking the excess off on a cloth and just soften those edges. I'm going to use this wee tool with a hook on it just to clean off like that. This stage you can think, depending on how thin you've rolled your clay, you can make the decision to build it up more, or what I'm going to decide to do is I'm just going to flatten this ever so slightly. So we'll just draw where that joint is. So I'll just use a wee tool like this. Again, this will be so much easier if your clay has been allowed to dry overnight. So when I'm taking this back, I'm bearing in mind the photograph or the template I've done here. So I'm going to clean up this area here. I want this to be fuller than the bone here. That joint has to be fuller, and the hoof has to be fuller as well. And on this leg, the hoof there, a wee bit fuller. Okay. So taking it a wee bit deeper, the two legs cross, and then coming up to fullness. This joint. Anytime you see a wee bit you're just not happy with, a really good tool is a wee wedge shaped paintbrush like this. It's so handy for areas where you can't get your finger into that are too fiddly. And so then I do also need this, because this is fuller here and fuller at the hoof. I need to take a wee bit away here. You do want to have the feeling that this is a round hoof, so you don't really want this edge to be square. You want this edge to be nice and square, but you want this to have the feeling that it's round. So you're going from proud to graduated into the background, proud to graduated into the background. Okay, and I'll just do something similar to the hind leg. That's again the area that's probably slightly around the hock there, so I'll leave that slightly higher. If you're working away here and you do accidentally take too much off, the beauty of clay is you can stick another wee bit back on. There are no disasters. But what I do want is a very definite step between this bit, this front leg, and the leg that's behind it. Again, the hoof goes from the base up and then down on a nice curve. Look at that. Okay, so that's that hind legs. What do we like time wise? Always worried this will cut out on you. Okay, so that's the hind legs, or the far side of the horse, kind of knocked back a little, if you like. The other one, actually, just for my, you don't need to be as detailed. I just need to put that wee dent in. Right, so now the fun bit. So we're going to start with the legs and add on that wee bit of depth, that wee bit of definition. So let's start adding on. I'm going to start with this front foot. I know this joint in here is narrower, and that this is fuller here and fuller at the hoof. Do keep your work tidy. If you're working and you have a wee tiny bit comes off, you see that if you tidy as you go, you're kind of able to see what you're working on a lot better. That's okay. Let's see. So just realised I forgot to make up the right slip, but it'll be fine. So just going to add on a little extra clay for the hoof, and because this clay is quite wet, I don't even need to cross that. I'll just add a bit of water around that. Then I've got it. Always use clean tools. I want to use that, and there's a wee bit of clay dried on it. You have to get that off. So you will find you're doing a lot of work with your paintbrush or your wedge brush. So I'm just going to blend them together with the next I want to put a wee bit of clay on for this joint. I'm just making a wee small. And just blend it in. So the next bit I'm going to add a wee bit on for the knee. So ideally if you had two, that was quite a large bit, if you add two wee sort of small balls, you know, you're going to have your outline or your planes here, so if you were very unsure about what you could do, you're doing, you could actually just make your bit of clay and check that it fits within the guide of the planes. So the horse's knee, if you think of two balls, not one. Yeah. Just blend that in. Again, you're doing it at home, you can take it as long as you want over this process till you get it exactly how you want it. And then I just with the wedge brush, I'm just gonna do a bit of a dent there to show that. Okay. So the next bit is the muscles of the foreleg. So there's a muscle that goes from the knee, and it nearly goes diagonally, sweeping round over and sweeping, so it's not straight, it's going from the top of that joint down towards the elbow, and then there's a wee small tendon there. We'll put the wee small one in first and then lay the other one over the top. So I'll just roll a wee sausage in my hand. And when I'm putting the slip on, I'm thinking it's almost like a practice run of where I'm going to put it. It's going to go from here, from the bottom of the knee joint up, and then just nip it off where you want it to finish. Again, you can keep referring to your template. This is a really good exercise to get you thinking about the muscles and the tendons in the horse. So then I'll make another wee sausage. So it is important that you do it in this order. You start from the legs and build towards the thicker areas. So we'll do the hind legs, and then we'll go on to the face and neck, and finally we'll do the shoulders, hindquarters and tummy. So this is a slightly thicker one. It's even too thin there, so I'm going to dab it off. This is going to go from the top and curl over to Right there. So I'll just leave it water. So this muscle goes from the top of the knee and it crosses over that smaller muscle you've just added on. It's all there in the templates for you. If you get lost, just do a wee bit at a time. Just blend that in. You're blending it in, do keep the feeling of the roundness of the muscle. You don't want to flatten it too much. And then I'm just going to finish it off by adding on this wee area of kind of the elbow there. So once you've done this, if you feel quite confident that you've done this quite easily, I have included a link to the step-by-step guide to making a 3D one of these. And I will make a wee video of how to make the stone wall, which is so much fun. And once you've made a stone wall, you're going to start making wee cottages. And stone walls are just the easiest, the quickest and the most fun thing to do. So I've added those together, but I don't want that to be, that's a very definite plane on its own. So I don't want that just to, merge, one to merge into the other. So let's be careful of that. So I'm just going to really basically repeat what I did in the front with the back leg. Put the head on first. It should come together quite quickly. But don't race it, take your time, just enjoy it. So, you don't even have to do it as detailed as this. You may be just happy with just the outline, and for you to be more creative with the finish. Again, personally I'm using this as a nameplate, so I think I'm going to glaze it with the metallic finish. I actually thought about possibly casting it in pewter. I know clay is the main material I use. I do work with metals as well. So I'm just putting this wee, the tendon that goes from the hock down to the back. Just put that in there. Okay. So again, a bit like the knee, there's two balls. There's the big one, the hock, and then a smaller one, the front of the joint. I'll put those on and then I'll just blend them in. So I hope you're enjoying creative play if you're at home experiencing lockdown and you can't get about your normal activities. It is actually a good opportunity to try something new. You definitely have more time on your hands. So what I'm going to do here is I just want to create a wee bit of that head in there. That'd be a nice curve. And I want to keep this a lovely smooth curve here, so then I'll add another section here. So actually I'm just realising that it's not terribly clear from my drawing. I wonder if I could have put the pen. I'm trying to pencil. Oh, all the pencils I keep in this room. I have a separate room that I use for drawing, a clean room if you like. So I don't have my pens here. These two circles are for the hock joint. On your drawing, this area is proud. This area is actually a dent. That circle is actually an indentation. So I don't know if you can see that. So that's proud, that's an indent. One. For this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this one on. It's just easier then to get the layout of this. So you can put your template on the top. I'm just going to do it very roughly. For big areas like this, I would crosshatch and slip it. Remember to tap your slip in, don't paint it on. You don't need to smooth all that, roughen up. Done. So it is important to get this angle. It needs to be well attached to the centre. It's a bit like applying wallpaper. You want to start in the middle and push any air pockets to the outside. This will be a thicker section than the smaller bits you've added on up to now. So that's very roughly. Let me see, I'm just going to shape that a bit better. Just smooth those together. Now it is important with this, when you're adding on this area of muscle, that you don't take it right to the end of the bottom. There's a thinner section here, so don't take it right to the end, leave that wee gap. And then this will be a lot thicker here, and then it'll blend in around the edges. You want that feeling of a nice big strong muscle. Do finish off by stroking your paintbrush in the direction the hair grows. Right, now we can add on a little bit here. So this is I'm going to stop the tape here just for a minute, just in case it hasn't been recording or something's happened, because I can't actually watch it and do this at the same time. So I'll stop, but I'll start again within a second. As I finish. Sorry, I want to get water there. Did that not finish? Oh, honest to goodness, finish. I wonder if I keep going, will it be okay? $60 million question. Oh, it's still big. Can't get it to finish, so I'll keep going, which is absolutely fine. It does mean that if this doesn't work or doesn't load, if you're not watching now, you might not get the chance to watch it later. So there's a fair wee bit of detail in the face. So what you can do, if you're not familiar with the horse's anatomy, again, put your template over the horse, line it up with the limbs, make sure they're tucked in. These legs actually need to go up a bit. Just going to raise my horse up, it's going to jump a little bit higher. Right, what you can do is just trace round some of these details. And then, when do we see where's my tickles? So I'm going to start from the bottom and kind of work up. I'm going to put this nose in. Now when you put the nose in, do pay attention to the fact the nose doesn't start at that centre line. It's offset. The nose is nearly in alignment with the eye. So you should have your eye clearly marked. And we come straight down. And then just use that tool. Create a wee bit of a nose, a nostril. So it's important you don't come right to the edge. Yes, that's enough. Then I'll also just put the mouth in. And I'm just going to tuck that chin. Again, just similar technique to this. I'm just sort of pushing it back, flattening it a bit, kind of send it back. Soften up the paintbrush. Okay. The deepest part of the nose is the area closest to the lips. So we're just on that. Right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add on this it's almost like a wee triangle muscle that works the muscles of the nose. So we paint on. So I'm just going to be triangle. I'm going to just go about with it. That's the right size. So if it's a triangle, it kind of has a curve here. This area is curved. And this goes into a point. This will be the thickest bit, and this will blend to nothing. And when you're putting it on, aim for the corner of the eye. I think that's actually, I see it there, it's too big. Hello everyone, I'm really sorry. Wi-Fi seemed to automatically disconnect, or I lost Wi-Fi signal. I realised I lost Wi-Fi signal when I was working on the face. So I'm just going to do another face, and hopefully this might even be a better angle for you. So I'll just quickly do the face. And okay, that's just a wee reminder to me that I should do shorter videos, and then I can join them together. Then if something goes wrong, I know about it sooner. I'll just put that neck in. So you get to see this stage again. Right. So I'm just really just tidying this up so that I can start work on it. Just softening the edges. So I'll just start from scratch with the head. Below the support of your eye quite clearly marked. Yep. So once I moved on to the head, I just tidied up any wee edges there, and then first thing I do is the eyes and the nostril. You start at the eye and come down parallel to the bridge of the nose, and then just make a wee indication for the nostril. That's maybe a wee bit big, but it's the nostril is set back from the centre of the nose. So then I add a wee bit of just a wee triangle to create the muscle that goes around the nostril. So this muscle is high here, and I wanted to taper it into a point, like a wedge, so it's higher here, and going down to a wedge. I just use my nail to nip off that curve of the nostril, and we'll place it on. And that nostril, this line goes to the corner of the eye, and this line goes to the opposite corner. So that way you can see where you've got too much clay there. Once I've done those two diagonal lines, I can see that this is all extra. So from the corner of the eye to that corner, just brush that in. Just smooth it in. Just remember to keep your eye parallel with your nostril parallel with the eye. And then this tucks in right. From the edge of that triangle, if you bring that right round in to the nose, and this is a diagonal line. Thought I would do it on the board here. Hopefully you'll be able to see it a wee bit clearer. When I was trying to see where the video left off, I thought, this is a terrible angle. I will try and work on finding out a way to film this so that you can get a really clear picture of what I'm doing. If ever you're making one of these step-by-step guides and you run into problems, do send me a wee message. Send me photographs of what you've been making, and I'm more than happy to give you a wee bit of a guiding hand to bring it back into line. So then we're just going to get the mouth in. And the mouth goes back further than the nostril. So if this is the height of the nostril, the mouth will go back slightly further. And it kind of, the muscle that runs along the lip kind of curves over in there. So again, I just use that wee wedge brush to soften anyway. I'm going to add a wee lip on there anyway. To make the lip, I'm just rolling a wee fine sausage. I just find this gives it a wee bit of definition. And then just nip it off, whatever length I need. You can do this for upper lip and lower lip, but generally the upper lip's enough. Just again blend that in. Then we straight till and adding that lip on, it's just brought it too far down. Just bringing that back up. Just going to lift the corner of this slightly. Blend it in. You want that lower lip area to be higher than this wee round chin. Okay, that stage. So next stage, I would move on to the area above the eye, and we're just going to add on a triangle shape this size. You know, with the nostril, I just used my thumbnail to nip out a wee bit. I'm going to do the same with that, just to give that a wee bit of curve. So I'm left with this kind of shape, that this goes up a little. You put it on. Blend it in with your wee brush. And this is a diagonal line. Goes from high here to blend it in to lower. So high and then lower. And then high. This will probably be the highest point here. You're going to blend this in around. And you want to be able to sweep your brush around that eye. And remember about the line from the corner of the eye to between the nostril and lip. And then just blend that in from high to low. Again, you do not have to do it as detailed as this if you don't want. If you have the basic outline, people are going to know it's a horse. You can just play about with it then. Maybe use patterning to decorate the surface. And this, when I've smoothed that on, that's come too far, so just take that off. So Get a wee eye in there in a minute. Before I get the eye in, I want to add this cheek on. This area here, because it's a slightly larger area. I will cross hatch it. And we'll just add on that cheek. It's almost a D shape, and it will be very proud. You can use your template with the different planes to get the exact size. Just play back that a wee bit. So the other thing to watch for when you're laying the cheek on, you don't want the cheek to extend too far down the neck, and you don't want the cheek to overlap the eye. So you have to really control it. That's going, see how that's going too far down the neck? So I will just trim a wee bit off. Get it closer to the size I want. That's better. And the proudest area that sticks up the highest area would be here. So when you're blending this in, you will have to check at the end that you haven't made it too big. You know, when you blend it in, the clay hasn't stretched and become too big. I want to do a paintbrush. So this area here, you do want there to be a different volume of clay here than the neck, but not as proud as in this corner here. So I'll just blend that in. This line, I'm not happy, that's too far over. This line of the cheekbone needs to be parallel with the head. I'm not going to get into that. You can remember the wallpaper, applying the wallpaper to put the pressure in the centre, and then work out, make sure you don't have air pockets. Do keep this ridge from the eye. And there's, at the bottom of the cheek, there's kind of a notch. I'll just cut that with my finger. That's where the teeth will fit in. So I'm just blending that. I try to always kind of finish off in the direction the hair grows. Just keep your edges nice and clean and tidy. Right. From here, I'm just going to put the teeth in, and then I can work back to the eye. So, again, wee sausage clay. I'll nip the taper bit off. You just nip it out to size, and then kind of slide that into the wee notch. And blend that in. So when you're blending it in, you still want it to be obvious that it's a different plane or a different volume of clay. You do want to keep it nice and round, a fullness. And then because there's 2 rows of teeth, I'll just do. And then just, sometimes you're blending and you can lose the detail. Okay. So now I'm going to put the eyeball in. Too small. And when you're putting your eye in, just be careful your eye doesn't get too big. There's always a tendency for the eye to be too big. Look at the size in relation to the nostril. Because this horse is jumping and full of action, its nostril, and the nostril will be slightly flared, will actually be bigger than the eye. So just bear in mind the scale. And I'm just going to see a wee bit of detail in here. What we need now is just a small area underneath the eye. So I'm just going to made a wee ball and flattened it. And I want it to be kind of slightly triangular. That's probably wet enough. So let me fiddle. Do make sure there's a definite, almost a tear duct there in that inner corner. And hopefully the templates will show you. Where the different areas go. Okay, so the next wee bit of the horse, you can get more fiddly and do more wee details. Again, it's just depends on your patience and your skill level. You can just wee tool like this. Start creating a wee bit of a so that clay's a wee bit damp. to be doing those wee details. But I do want there to be a definite muscle around that eye. I think I could just do a wee tiny bit of clay underneath that nostril. And when you're working, you're always constantly looking at it and assessing. Does this look right? What's not quite? I always think it's a bit like those games, picture games you play, spot the difference. That's what you're doing all the time with sculpture. What's the difference between the way I want it to turn out and what it looks like now? So, other than the mane that'll go on at the end, we'll just put on the ears. So I'm just made a sausage, thickish sausage, but tapered at one end. You should be able to, where's the needle? So if you follow this jawline, this lovely D round here, if you draw that round, and that cheekbone, draw it up. There's like a wee quarter. If you do those two lines, there'll be a quarter, and in the middle of that, that's your attachment point for your ear. In the photograph, this horse has his ears facing back. It's entirely up to you. You could have them facing forward. Actually, this is a wee bit small. I'm just going to get a wee bit bigger. That's too big. So you want that kind of cone shape. And then if you've got a pencil. So what I'm going to do in this, so I've rounded this just by stroking it, the back of the ear. You can actually see if you put it down on the board and stroke it, you will, when you're stroking it, you're trying to get a ridge down the centre there. And then just take a pencil. And remember that the horse's ears aren't a flap. You know, they're round, they're like a C shape. You know, when you cut, you know, when I cut through this, hopefully you'll see that'll be a C shape. And that's what you want that C shape to be. And then a flap. So, you see the way the clay is cracking a wee bit? That's telling me the clay is dry. If that happens to you, just a wee bit of water and smooth it down. It's really important that you don't allow your edges to be cracked, because if they crack slightly at this stage, by the time it dries, that will have opened up and just ruined your piece. We nubble there at the end. I don't really like it. So I am just doing that in. I sometimes think of it, you know, the lilies, this is arum lilies. Just a wee bit that shape. The inner line or edge is shorter than the outside edge. And for the length, if you measure from the centre of your hole, the wee insertion point, to the centre of your eye, and then from the tip, and then just cut it diagonally. Then I would tend to put it on. Remember where your insertion point is. Use this, what I'm doing is I'm wrapped around the paintbrush and then I'm squeezing the paintbrush against the clay, and that stops this area being flattened too much. So my horse is going to have nice forward facing ears. Because he's a very keen jumper. So I have, you see where I blended that right back? That is just to get that attached. I will work that again, the line of the cheekbone, if you think of it coming straight up, you kind of want your ear kind of finish there. Also, if you're not sure what angle to be, if you say your horse has forward facing ears, one of the good wee tips in how to place the angle of your ear, you know, I've shown you with the insertion point, but also a good tip for the angle of the ears. And I know the ears go forward, back and flick all over the place, but if your ears are forward, see if you follow that line of that jaw, see that line of that jaw, and you run them along that line, you're not going to go far off. Okay. So I'm going to stop the video here, and then I'll start it again, just in case Wi-Fi or something interrupts me. And I will jump back onto the other horse, who I haven't actually got ears on yet. Okay, back with you in a minute. The next wee stage, I've popped back onto the one I was making before I lost Wi-Fi. So we've the head done with the ears on, and we're going to start on the neck now. And I'll just leave that there. We're going to get on the muscles that I have drawn on your template. So there's the shoulder. So would be the proudest area. Just cross hatch that. So there's the most volume in that bit. But there's also volume in this bit, but not as much. So I'll get those on. If you're in doubt about what shape or volume, you can just use your template. I'm just going to do this quite roughly. But what you do want to have the feeling of a nice arc there, a nice arcing muscle. So again, you want to make sure you've it well attached in the centre and then work out. But don't flatten it too much, because you want it to be nice round, proud muscle. And it doesn't go all the way, this muscle doesn't go all the way to the crest of the neck there. So as you're blending it in, if you're finding that the clay goes right there to the crest of the neck, just take it off. I think there's too much clay there. So instead of putting two separate areas, I'm just going to do one area, make this proud here, and just narrow it down a wee bit here. Let's just blend it in. just get that groove in from the neck. So that's the narrowest bit, thinnest part of the neck. The gullet is. And there's another band, slightly thinner. And this area. Right now, the rest of it will come together very quickly. So our hind quarters already done. Or we just want to put on the shoulder then. The other thing I should say is when you are working at the head, when you finish the head and especially the eyes, when you're happy with them, stop, go make yourself a cup of tea or coffee, go away from the piece and come back and just double check with fresh eyes that they're exactly the way you want them. Again, you can use the template. I am just going to do this roughly. Sorry. Now this shoulder has to be more volume to it than the neck. And again, make sure you attach it in the centre and then work outwards to reduce the risk of any air pockets. And then you can just, if you were doing this accurately at home, you would be using the template, but I am just going to do this. Speed's sake, going to take this out. Just doing it very roughly on the sculpture itself. Tucking that shoulder. So you do want to have some definition in this strong band of muscle here. I like to do a wee bit just to give that ridge of the shoulder a wee bit more definition. Just to do that wee line there. So again, this should have a nice round feel to it. Just going to trim that away. Oops, sorry, I put my water too close to the stand. So now all we have to do is put this area in here. So again, you know, just think about where that you want the area of greatest volume to be, and you want that to be about here. So the barrel of the ribs are curving round this widest point about here. So cross hatch a wee bit of slip. Oops, sorry. because I haven't measured it, I'm just going to put it on and then cut it away. But the area that I'm adding on, I don't want it to touch. I want there to be a margin, if you like, between the back and this area I'm adding on, and a margin between the bottom of the belly and the bit I'm adding on. Do this way. So it's really just to cut that down to size. I press it in the centre, get a good firm join, and then feather out. Remove any air pockets. So it's important that you have those 3 separate areas: shoulders, midsection and hind legs. You don't want, definition in there. You don't want that all to merge into one. Now, I'm not happy that this area needs, I think it needs to be even prouder, and there needs to be more volume there. So I'm just going to add a wee bit more to the centre. So I'm just going to add, the horse's ribs nearly flare out to this kind of point. So I'm just going to add a wee bit. And this is very, very rough. Just and press it on from the centre and then smooth it out. But when I'm smoothing it out, I don't want to flatten it too much. I just want to blend it in. And if you like, you can add a wee bit of definition to the ribs. I'm just going to add a little on here for the withers. Just a wee bit of area behind the withers. Okay, so that is the bulk of your horse done. All it remains is really for the tail, the mane and the tail. I'll just work at that and smooth that around. That is a bit too much of a square edge there, so I'll just work at bringing that around. So for the tail, it's a very similar technique as you use with the mane. Just cutting, this is going to be too big. So I'm using a wee tool like this with a spoon, and then I'm just going to stroke and stroke and stroke. Now you don't want to, see why I'm doing this quite uniform. I would do the first stroke uniform, and then you kind of want to mess it up, be a wee bit more organic with it. So there's a bit more flow, and keep going over and over and over, so It's very random, very irregular, and you can add a wee bit more texture in with your wee wire brush. So don't have it too even. Pinch off a few areas. So that's too much. Just cut that down the same size. And a wee bit of slip along the outside. I kind of do remember the kind of shape that the wind would be blowing it. So when you're, I would never, you know, kind of take it back from the pole and blend it in a wee bit. What you really want to do is use this tool to take chunks away until you have it the kind of length you want. You'll be doing this on the base, so when you're doing that technique, you'll probably be scratching the base. Simply get your paintbrush and, you know, a broader paintbrush. Where is it? Now the flat or wedge shaped paintbrushes are better. You would just simply brush any wee rough marks out. If you want to put a rider and a tack on, do the rider, do the saddle first, do the rider, and then with the reins, just I'll show you in this. Don't add on. I would tend to just, so this is the bridle. If you're doing the bridle freehand, you know that the bit ring lines up with the mouth. I would just scratch that on. You got your brow band. It depends what type of bridle you have on. What am I doing that for? This and like that. Well, depends on you would drop. Well, it depends on whatever tack you want to put on it. And now you would make a wee rein. Add your rein on extra. Okay, and let me see, I finished off with a wee bit of mane forelock at the front. So make sure it's tucked in behind that ear. Perhaps have a wee bit coming backward. Okay, a bit more like a bar. just clean this away. And then for the tail, you can just layer up bits and pieces for the tail. Let's see. Can you see this there? So do make sure your edges are not too even. But that's basically it. I hope you have fun making this, and I look forward to seeing your photographs. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that was clear enough for you. Thank you. This morning I just wanted to give you a very quick demonstration of how I finish off the jumping horse plaque. I've bisque fired it and underglazed it, but if you have made this from air drying clay, let it dry for 2 weeks and then paint it with acrylic paint using a dark umber, a dark brown and a black mixture made up into quite a thin wash, and build that up in layers. You need a wash to get into the crevices. So once you've done that and it is dry, then you can, if you want for a bit of extra support, I'm going to attach it onto this board. I've attached it onto the board using grip fill, but I will also use two wee screws in here, which I'll then cover over with black paint and the gilding wax as well. This gilding wax, I was able to get it from Art and Home in Hollywood, County Down. I'm sure you can get it online as well. So this is just going to be a very short video. So what I've done is I have put some I'm using a flat brush, and I've put a little on the tip. I'll then take the excess off on the newspaper, and then I will, using the brush flat to the horse's head, I'll just start very, very lightly picking up the highlights. And try to work with your brush flat, and if possible just work in the one direction. Really just so, I want to give the effect that the light is almost coming down here. So I'll work flat. So I know I said work one direction, then I changed direction, but I'm still, I'm still working downwards. I'm not going backwards and forth. So, and this is a soft flat brush. Now I'll just pick up those highlights on the horse. And you really need very, very little. Do practice this technique on a piece of paper before you do it on your actual plaque, your actual horse. I just want a wee bit of that in the background. The secret is to have very, very little, to have a soft brush and to have very, very little of it on your brush. Just want a wee bit in the background as well. So you don't, you do, it's important that you do leave areas of that brown black free from the gold. Then if you were putting that outside, if you just give it a coat with clear varnish or lacquer, I find the spray on lacquer works quite well if you're putting it outside. What I've also done is after it was fired, I've attached on lettering here. So I'll just, again, I want to kind of remember the direction I did the others. So I'm starting to run out of the wax on my brush. So I'm actually going to go back to the newspaper rather than go into the pot of wax. So this wee pot of gilding wax will last you a very long time. You use very little at a time. And yeah, I might just pick up the edge slightly, but going around the edge. I'm trying to just give it a wee bit of a frame. So again, less, always aim for less. So once you've finished doing this, and if you think, oh, maybe could do with putting a wee bit more on, take a wee break for a minute and go away and come back to it and just check, because the less you have on, the more effective it will be. I'm brushing over this, but there's very little wax left on my brush. Okay, so maybe not the best camera angles, but I just wanted to show you that complete.